Hello, everybody. We are back. It was a little bit of a break there, which I am happy to kind of be taking. It allows me to catch up on the reading, the working at night, the family life. There's a lot going on. So we had a little bit of a breather. I am very excited to talk to my guest tonight. I mentioned in the original post that it was a brutal weekend for me. I went 0 for 5 in football. The Jets lost. All four of my fantasy teams lost. But I knew that I had this coming up on Wednesday and was super stoked about it. I have read both of his books so far that are out, and two 5 stars. I was going to lead into that, but two 5 stars. I love both of them very much. So we're going to get cracking and get talking about it because no one wants to hear just me talk. I don't want to hear just me talk. So we'll bring him to the stage now, Mr. Mosha Winter.
Hello.
How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Thank you so much for having me. How
Oh,
about you?
my pleasure. Before I even get started, I wanted to ask, are you a sports guy? Because it looks like some people in the chat are also getting murdered in fantasy sports.
I am a sports guy, but not American football. I like the other type of football,
Regular football. Yeah.
the one where
The
you
first
actually use
one.
feet.
Yeah, exactly. It's really terrible, but I feel like I got into I guess original football. They make the video games very good and very fun to play. So I
You mean
remember
like FIFA?
FIFA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love those games. It's like my
awesome.
guilty pleasure.
Right, it really is, and they make it awesome. But I'm trying to think. I was Millwall, like when I was in college. That used to be our team because we just did like that random generator 3 times, and it popped up. And then, did you ever see the movie Green Street Hooligans?
No.
It is not great, but Millwall's the bad guys in that, so it kind of was funny to have that happen.
Nice.
Um, but yes, I'm gonna pivot back to video games later. But I wanted to share. I'm gonna start with the first book of yours I read, Born in Fury, uh, because right off the bat, I wanted first off, fantastic cover. I'm gonna share the
Thank you.
second book's cover in a little bit, but how did you decide to go on this format with it? Because it looks beautiful. It was. I think I had this on my TBR on Goodreads way before like we even talked or anything. So nice job with the hook.
Thank you. Do you mean like the design of the cover?
Hmm.
Yeah, so with the design of the cover, it's kind of interesting because I don't actually think I'm like an amazing cover designer because, well, my skill set is limited. I'm not able to paint like super realistic, amazing covers the way that you'll see it, like the broken binding and stuff like that.
Mm.
So when I was designing the covers for both of the books, I was like, okay, I need to be realistic about what I'm capable of. And I knew that if it was going to turn out well and be effective, it needed to be kind of simple and more like symbolic, not like painted, but kind of more design focused.
Hmm.
And so that's why the cover is simple with, some textures and stuff on it. And I mostly just tried to like create as much contrast as I could and make it pop, make it stand out. And I think the new one is much, much better. The
I
first
was
one
about to
was
say.
everything about that first book was quite experimental. The cover was more experimental. The book itself was experimental. And I didn't spend as long on that cover. I just wanted something that would get the job done. Whereas with the Winds of War, I actually like spent like a solid 3 weeks just toiling on the cover to really get it right.
Which I am popping up now. I was going to share it later. That is sick. Like I didn't
Thank you.
know. This wasn't even a loaded question. I didn't know that you did the artwork for those, but that's movie poster
Oh,
worthy.
yeah, yeah, I made these myself.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you started answering the question, I was like, holy shit. Because I really love the. I guess it's like a orangey color that with it, because you don't really see that kind of shading that often. So I like you said, you wanted something to make it pop, and just kind of the whole aspect it has going on in there it's very very well done.
Thank
So
you.
added props to you because I did not know that. I fuck up stick figures, so when I hear people like when you guys are authors and artists and all this type of stuff, it's just like, ooh, man, like I miss that creative gene big time. Um,
Yeah, well, a lot of practice and hard work goes into it. So
which yeah, you can tell, and it's kind of funny because you said that Born in Fury was more experimental, and I wanted to ask about that because I read Born in Fury, and then the technically second book, but it's really
right,
book one of the trilogy. What made
right.
you want to separate it that way?
So it's kind of a difficult question to answer because it's been a messy process.
Mm,
I can't claim to have like planned it ahead of time. Born in Fury was actually initially a short story that I wrote before I even knew I was going to try to write books. And it was a short story that was not nearly as good as the book, but it was good enough that people were like, "Whoa, this is awesome. Like you should do more of this."
mm,
And then I had always wanted to actually write books at some point. I just wasn't sure when. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. But I didn't know if it was going to turn out well. I didn't know if I was going to do anything with it. And so when I say it's experimental, it's kind of like the whole time I was working on Born in Fury, I didn't have plans beyond it. I didn't even know what would happen when it was finished. I thought maybe I'd just share it with like, I don't know, friends and family. Obviously, a lot more than that happened. And so when I was writing it, because I was so unsure, I didn't want to go all in and like, you know, do my absolute best, make it as big and awesome as it could be. Um, Whether it's in terms of like the cover design or the story itself. And then when I finished it and shared it with people, it was received very positively. And that was super encouraging. That gave me a whole bunch more confidence. And then I was like, okay, I should actually go all in now.
mhm,
But I also don't want to um, lose the foundation that Born in Fury has like laid out with like the three viewpoint characters that are there. I was like, I like these characters. People like these characters. I don't want to just abandon them and start something totally new. So I was like, okay, I can make Born in Fury a prequel that takes place 12 years before the Winds of War. And then since now I really want to go all in and make a book that is like, you know, put all of myself into it and make it as good as it can be, um, I will make this one book one of the actual series.
mm,
So that's how the structure ended up being how it is. It was kind of a messy process. And the
yeah,
reason why I actually generally recommend to people, like, I don't think there's no wrong way to read these two books, like in terms of order. Some
mhm,
people prefer to read them chronologically, in which case Born in Fury comes first, 12 years prior. My recommendation usually to new readers is actually to read The Winds of War first, simply because I think it's so much better. And I think
mhm,
it's so much more of a reflection of who I am as a writer. And I also think that because Born in Fury is definitely slower and it's not as like visceral and entertaining as The Winds of War, I
mm.
feel as though people will actually enjoy reading it more as background for characters that they're already interested in, having read The Winds of War. So,
Interesting. Yeah,
yep.
that's a very good detailed answer. I guess you could kind of do it either way. I was happy to start with Born in Fury because, like you said, it follows only a few characters. It's much smaller in scope, which was for me a little bit easier. I didn't have the option to start with Wins because it was,
Right,
hasn't wasn't ready
right,
to
right.
be released yet. So
Yeah,
for me, I really enjoyed it, but you can definitely see the growth and expansion and everything like that you're talking about, especially the world building aspect
yeah.
from Born in Fury to the second book. Um, but still starting with Born in Fury a little bit. What was kind of the inspiration behind it, especially the Ravi people and everything? How that was, the predominantly they're kind of travelers, nomads looking for a place to call home.
Mm,
That kind of plot line has been done before, but the way that this was done made it so much more emotional and unique. So, how did you go into it and really get help your process to get that point across?
so it's a difficult question for me to answer because it just sort of came to me. It's just like when I wrote the short story, I guess that was in the short story, the Ravi were there and they were a nomadic tribe. So what inspired that exactly, I couldn't say, but I do know that like living in Canada, we have a lot of Indigenous people here, and the history of Indigenous, the First Nations tribes of Canada is that they were nomadic, or at least a huge number of them were nomadic. And in some of like my personal work, I've worked closely with indigenous tribes and I really love their culture. And so I think that's had a big influence for sure.
Mm.
And then also living in Canada, living in Alberta, where I'm close to the Rocky Mountains, I really enjoy going out into nature and camping. And I think having done so much of that, it felt like writing a story about a tribe that lives on the move was something that I would do well with and I would enjoy. It's out in nature pretty much the
Mhm.
entire time. And then in terms of like the more emotional side of it, I definitely, I mean, I'm myself a minority and uh, have faced, um, persecution for that
Mm.
throughout my life. And so, writing a story from the point of view of a people who are facing that, and facing discrimination, and being attacked just for who they are was something that I could relate with. And so, I
Mm.
think the emotional side of it, at least on a political level, that's where that came from. And as for like with the characters and what they go through throughout the story, I honestly couldn't tell you like that. I think just like, probably stories, shows, books, etc. that I've experienced that I've had in the back of my mind throughout my life. Once I sat down to write, they just sort of bubbled, they just came together and formed into Born in Fury.
What do you think your biggest influences show book movie wise are?
Um, Book wise, definitely George R. R. Martin, Song of Ice and Fire, in particular for the Winds of War. It's like the number one thing that people compare the Winds of War with, which is extremely flattering for me. Another big one is Steven Erikson. Malazan is probably my favorite series. Um, I know that it's probably cliche to say so, but Lord of the Rings is the biggest one. I think the moment when I realized I wanted to write a fantasy book at some point in my life was when I watched Lord of the Rings for like the 10th time 10 years ago or something like that. I was like, okay, this is awesome. And I read the books for the first time around that time. And yeah, so in terms of influences, it's definitely those,
Yeah,
which I guess is kind of a boring answer because it's like the most popular ones, but
but it's so obvious and clear that that those are influences on you, and you were able to take it and make it your own. Like I was talking to my wife, like probably like 25 minutes ago before I came downstairs to get all set up, and I was like, I give her brief rundowns just of like, you know, the background, the story, that type of thing, and I was like,
cool.
the winds, like there. Again, I'm very good on not spoiling anything, but there was definitely some stuff in there where it was like it took my breath away in a
Oh,
way that
wow.
it hadn't happened since I read Game of Thrones, where I was just like, no fucking way. And then I read it and I was like, well, now what? Like it was
Yeah.
one of those things. And it was just like that couldn't have just happened. So it was like you said, flattering. I'm sure to be compared to it, but just know that even the comparisons that are flattering, just know that you knocked it out of the park with it. It's not
Thank you so much.
empty praise there. Um, it was very funny to read Born in Fury and then go into the second book. Because in Born in Fury, my favorite character was Rizu, who I hope
Everyone's favorite character was Rizu.
okay, thank God. But again, almost a little bit of a similar, not similar, but a kind of like a trope that we've come across before, where it's like a younger girl trained as an assassin for the Empire. But
Mm.
again, I'm not doing any spoilers or anything, and I feel like this is why I was so happy to read this book and then the second, because you see where she was before what happened in book two. But
For sure. Yeah.
with that storyline, what made you want to go that route, and then also make it unique into itself and not be the typical little girl like knows how to kill. Like we've seen this a couple times, but it was fun to read in your book.
In Born in Fury or in Winds?
In Born in Fury, like when she was still learning how to become the assassin, was that always a plot line
Um,
that you wanted to have in there?
I think honestly, I'm not sure with that question. I is another one of those things that just sort of well, so I guess because I was at the time, like I know now that I'm not a pantser or a gardener in terms of my writing style, but at the time I thought I was. And as a result, it all just sort of came up as I wrote.
Mm.
and there was essentially no planning in it. And I think it's really just comes down to the fact that I've always found assassin stuff very cool. I've always found rogue type characters cool, and I like video games a lot, and I often like to play as characters of that class, that style.
Mhm.
And so, um, when I was writing Rizu, and she was, just going through the terrible things that were happening to her, uh, it just popped into my head that what if she becomes initiated into an Assassin's Academy? And to make it more interesting, the Assassin's Academy is on the side of her enemy.
Mhm.
Um, and that's pretty much how it came to be. I wish I had like a more like detailed, thoughtful answer to that, but
Well, that's cool though, because you don't like that's what made it unique and fun. Like halfway through, when you know everything kind of pops off, it takes a turn, and you realize what her background is, and that she's kind of been fighting. Like she knows in the back of her mind, I am going to kill the guy who is training me,
yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah.
a very well deserved death
Yeah.
that she wants to happen. Um, I'm very good at not spoiling anything, but along the way, you kind of really I mean, especially in both of these books, the bad guys are so hateable, like
Yeah.
so hateable. I I had my little notes and I forgot to write his name down. But who was in book one? The guy.
Regis.
Wow, that despicable. But
Yeah. Yeah, he's the
very.
worst.
He was really the worst. But it was a lot of fun to have him there and be the target of all of that hatred.
Yeah.
And then eventually get any comeuppance that came his way. But I feel like the story definitely. It's funny you say slower because I didn't think it was slow, but especially once Rizu and um, I'm so bad at names. Uh, why main character
UA.
UA?
Yep.
Okay, see, I always double check before pronouncing anything. But UA, when they finally linked up, it felt like
Yeah.
the pacing really picked up. Then the story was just rolling nonstop to the end.
Yeah.
And his backstory, especially as he loses his the Bond brother, and
Yeah.
eventually links up with the dragon. And dragons again, kind of going back to we see him all the time, but Lakari, great character.
Hmm.
Uh, how were you able to get a dragon full of emotion, the way that they have that telepathic ability kind of to talk to each other and understand what they want to do before they even do it? Was that challenging to pull off?
It actually wasn't. And
Mm.
the answer to that question is easy for me. And it honestly just comes down to the fact that I have pet dogs. At the time that I wrote Born in Fury, I just had one. I have two now, but Benji, my golden retriever, um, it's funny, like it didn't actually occur to me that this was what was happening until my mom read one of the early drafts of Born in Fury, and she said, Lakari reminds me of Benji. And I was like, wow, yeah, actually Lakari just kind of is Benji. Because when Benji was a puppy, even though he's a golden retriever and goldens are supposed to be the most like timid, easygoing dogs, Benji was like the 1% off chance of his kind that was an absolute monster when he was a puppy. So he was super feisty, and he would, bite all the time, and he was very difficult, and it's just exactly like Lakari when he first enters the story, and UA's like trying to get this dragon under control, and then they slowly start to bond, and I didn't realize as I was writing it that that's what was happening, but it was basically my experience with my dog
Mhm.
directly inspired Lakari's character. And I think you know I having pets that I love very much makes it so writing animal companions is really natural and easy for me. And that's another thing that in as you know, in the Winds of War, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go all in with this too, and have like, rather than just have the one dragon, I'm gonna add even more animal companions of different species and stuff like that, because
Mm.
I have fun writing that, and I think I am able to do a good job with it because of my experience with my own pets. So yeah.
Yeah, and especially with the dog aspect, there is a animal in Winds where much more dog more based
Yeah,
than a dragon, but it is
yeah.
funny how that point got across. Um,
Yeah, it's actually it's funny. So the you're referring to the wick wolf in the winds. It's not really a spoiler. There's a type
mhm,
of wolf called a wick wolf. It's kind of like a dire wolf, but even bigger and fiercer. And when I was initially, again in an earlier draft, I was showing my brother this time. Uh, I think one of the very first scenes when Maxon, the character, is interacting with his wick wolf, and at one point, there was like a description that like Maxon looked over and the Wick Wolf was panting doggishly with a smile. And then my brother was like writing feedback and he's like, okay, this isn't Benji. This isn't a golden retriever. Like you have to tone it down. And I was like, oh my God, he's so right. Like this is a vicious Wick Wolf and it's panting doggishly because again, my influence of I'm just imagining my dog. And yeah, thought that was funny.
that is pretty funny actually. But there were some, and like you said, there were other species tossed in there. I'll pivot now, and I'm going to share the cover again one more time because this just released maybe like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago,
So the ebook released about a month ago, and then
month
the
ago.
paperback released more recently than that. And then now
Mhm.
there's also like the hardcover isn't actually out yet. I'm hoping it's going to be out quite soon for pre-order, but so it's kind of like it's been releasing for a month.
Staggered release.
Yeah.
Uh, how has it been going? The release, all the feedback that I see is extremely positive, which I have, has to
Yeah,
be
it
very
has been.
relieving.
I've been blown away by it. I really don't think that as because like for me, I feel like this book is my true debut. I've kind of often mentioned that simply because when I released Born in Fury, again, the book was experimental and I didn't market it much. I didn't like try to have a big release or anything. I didn't even know anyone, I think, in the book community, particularly at that point. It was when I released Born in Fury that I was like, hey, I should get involved in this community because for one, it seems really cool and these people seem really friendly and for two because it's probably going to be good for if I want to take the next book more seriously. So The Winds of War was my true debut for me,
Mhm,
and uh it being a debut, I really don't think I could have asked for more in
mhm,
terms of how it's gone so far. There's been um not that, like numbers aren't everything, but at this point I think it's almost at 400 sales.
wow, nice.
And in just a month, to me, that's crazy. Tons of people have been reading it all the way through on Kindle Unlimited.
Mhm,
And I know that a lot of people have been holding out for the collector's edition, which is coming again. I can't say exactly when, but I'm hoping quite soon.
mhm,
And so, and even the fact that there's going to be a collector's edition that is going to be like, I have rarely, if ever, seen an indie author as new as myself, be able to have an opportunity like that. And so it's not lost on me how fortunate I am to even have an opportunity like that, to be working with the Broken Binding
mhm.
on my essentially my first book. And
Debut.
exactly.
Mhm,
And then as far as like reception, I mean the overall rating on whether you look at Goodreads or just like amalgamate them from all the different platforms, it's about like 4.7, which
wow.
is like over 9 out of 10, which like again, I can't ask for better than that. The fact that people are regularly comparing it to A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's not the kind of comparison where they're like, this is like Walmart, A Song of Ice and Fire.
Hmm.
At the same time, though, I'm glad that no one's saying this is better because I would actually be offended. I would actually be mad. I'd be like, my goal is maybe, I don't know, in like my 50s, I can write something that might come close to being as amazing as A Song of Ice and Fire. But right now, I don't want anyone claiming that my book is anywhere like it's to say that it's comparable is a compliment enough. And the
Hmm.
fact that people have been saying that they've been making that comparison in like a positive light has been just amazing and mind blowing to me because again, I'm so new to all of this. Like
Hmm.
I'm I feel like I'm newer to the scene, if you want to call it that, than almost everyone else, what it's
Hmm.
felt like to me. And yeah, so I'm extremely happy with it, extremely grateful. Even the fact that I'm here, that you like, you invited me to come and hang out and chat with you when I feel like all your other guests are more uh like a bigger deal than me. It's all very humbling.
Yeah, I don't think so at this point. I think, well, there's like one or two people that I've spoke to where I kind of just threw out an invite and I was like, I'm just gonna wait for the no, and then the yes came back. I was like, oh shit, like okay. But I feel like everyone has been very down to earth, which is the coolest thing for me. Like when I started doing this, I joined Willow Wraith and wanted to be a part of that. And since I'm the only non-author there, it was brought up where it's like, why don't you host like a live stream, do that and everything.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, so this was like a little bit of a way where I could give back. Kind of, I get to talk to incredibly talented people and talk about books that I love. So I got very lucky to do that. But it's like you said, this whole scene that we kind of I only probably got in around the same time as you. I think I
Oh,
joined my
really?
first blog in like the summer of 2024, maybe
Oh,
a
I
little.
just sort of assumed that you've been, doing this stuff for longer.
No, I just don't stop talking. So it feels like it feels like I've been in there for a long time, but I just
Yeah,
annoy everybody. Uh, my
yeah.
Twitter before this was just to make fun of the Jets, and now it's like, oh, like, I'm just going to pivot to book stuff. But
Well,
um,
kudos to you. I mean, you're doing this, you're doing great. And like, I mean, you were interviewing Anthony Ryan not long ago. I was watching that one and like, well done.
thank you. That one threw me off where I was like, oh my God, he said yes. And then
Yeah.
like, I asked him in like April, and I was like, could we do like July or something? Like, I can't have Anthony Ryan be the first guest. Like, I would just be stumbling over things and be like, you're really good. And so, but I feel like as it goes on, I am very happy that a lot of the people who I have on are still so fresh and getting their name out there and putting out some amazing stuff like yourself. So it's like, what more could I ask for? So when I asked and you said yes, it was like fantastic. And then I got to read both of them, and it worked out because, like I said already, I love both of them. And especially book two, book one, always
Yeah.
going to mix that up. But the Winds of War, coming off of Born in Fury, like I said a little bit ago, it was much more evident that this is a step up in all aspects, like writing skill, world building, and just like the general scope.
Right.
So my question to start off on that was, how did you balance the elevated levels of world building? Like, we're going to different locations, we're crossing the sea, we're going everywhere. How did you do that while also keeping the characters that we started to really love from book one in their own heads and not lose focus of them?
So well, that's a pretty big question. The it started for me when I was writing Born in Fury because I think the fact that like my favorite fantasy series are Song of Ice and Fire, Malazan kind of shows that I love giant world building. I love vast histories and all of that. So when I was writing Born in Fury, I was trying really hard to restrain myself, but I couldn't help that like as I was writing a story that was focused on just the Ravi, I'm envisioning this vast empire and I'm like, coming up with its hierarchy and I'm imagining like what kind of broader world is this taking place in while only hinting at those things. And so the world building had begun while I was writing Born in Fury. And then after when I started planning and preparing to start writing The Winds of War, I basically have this Google Doc called The Tapestry of the Tarnished that is like it's literally novella length in terms of how it's sheer word count and it's just world building. It's like a I want to say it's organized well, but honestly, using a Google Doc for this kind of thing probably is like not possible to organize well, but it's literally like 20,000, 30,000 words, something like that, of just places and histories and, lore and character names and character things like personalities and who knows who's related to who, imperial houses, things like that. And I use that document to try to keep track of all of it. I've heard some other like George R. R. Martin one time in an interview, I believe. I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm pretty sure somebody asked him and he said he just remembers this stuff. And I couldn't. There's no way I would not be able to keep track of all of that just in my head. So I've got this giant document. I'm always adding like I'll be going about my day like, taking my dogs for a walk and then suddenly have an idea for some cool thing that I'm like, oh, that should be in the world or that should be included in the current thing I'm writing. And then I'll just like pull out my phone. This is why I use the Google Doc because then I can pull out my phone, add it in there, and then it's
Mm.
good to go for whenever I need it. And then when I'm writing the story, when I'm writing the actual book itself, I try not to get too distracted by the world building and all that kind of stuff because I know that ultimately what people are going to enjoy, or at least I figure what people are going to enjoy when they're reading the story, is the characters and the plot. The characters most of all. And if I go too crazy just focusing on world building, then people are going to get bored and it's going to be info dumpy. So as I'm writing, I refer to my world building document and add world building as needed for what's relevant to the characters and what they're going through within the story.
Very
And
good
I
way of doing it.
sorry.
I thought you were done. I said very good way of doing it. It
Yeah,
comes
and I was
across.
pretty much done. Yep.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, no
But
worries.
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because along the way, like I said, you start to fall in love with the characters in Born in Fury, and they come across as more flawed and more human in the second book, especially because of the trials and tribulations that they have to do
Right.
and go through. So hearing the way that that balance is created was very interesting. Um, I don't believe George R. R. Martin for a fucking second that all of that's in his
And
head.
again, honestly, like I'm referring to an interview I probably watched like 5 years ago. I don't want to put words in his mouth. He probably didn't even mean it that way. I just took it that way
We'll go with he
because
meant it that way because it's easier to make fun of a little bit.
yeah.
His interviews are fun, but there was what was it? I went to the World of Ice and Fire book release in
Oh wow, cool.
yeah, in New York City when that came out in like 2013, and it was like a Q&A panel, so they gave us all like an index card, and I'm wearing a Grateful Dead shirt right now. It's hard to see, but there's a lot of weird, subtle influence references to the Grateful Dead in his books. It's
I'm so sorry. I don't even know what the Grateful Dead is. It's a band.
jam band from like the
Gotcha.
olden days, but they're
Gotcha.
still like around the ones that are alive still. But
Right.
there's like a bunch of references, and we were at this Q&A, and I was like, "These are a couple references. Do you like the Grateful Dead?" And I was with my buddy, who this has a point, trust me. But he was like, "The way that something about the religions and the sparrows. What influenced you to do that?" And both of our questions were back to back. And when he got the intense diehard fan question about religion, he's like, I don't really know. Like I just make it up. And then to read my question was like, I love the Grateful Dead. I love trucking, and I call my home Terrapin State, and started listing songs. So I was elbowing my buddy. I was like, I told you. But so
That's
that's why I
awesome.
don't. That's why I don't think he entirely knows everything because he was responding to a jam band question, and when someone was
Yeah.
like, "Well, what about this huge religion in your books?" He's like, "I don't really know. I make it up." But and
That's awesome.
it was funny, so I was happy about that. I think it got picked up in a couple magazines where it was like George R. R. Martin named the Weirwood trees after Bob Weir, who's one of the singers. He never said that, and I messaged him and got ghosted, obviously. But I was like, I am so sorry. I didn't imply that, and I'm sure he saw it and was like, "You're a fucking idiot." But
Wow, what a crazy story.
it was it was long and drawn out, but like I said, it had a point, and I wanted to lead into this because the way that I was talking about the villains in book one being diabolical and evil, the villains in book two stepped it up a lot. And one of the main groups that was in there is kind of a religious based group that's attacking really everyone, the Empire, the Ravi,
Yep.
everybody. What influenced you to bring that aspect into the story to have like a kind of a religious undertone and almost like a cult
It is a cult, yeah.
environment going? Yeah, so like the cult environment, what made you
Yeah.
decide to bring that into the story?
Several things. One like definite inspiration for that is like Scientology.
Mhm.
L. Ron Hubbard, the guy who founded Scientology, he like famously has a quote, something, I mean, it's not verbatim, but it's something along the lines of like, if you want to make money or control people, just start a religion.
Yeah,
And this isn't like me, ragging on religions. I don't inherently have anything against religions or religious people, but the truth is that religious extremism is a very, very convenient and relatively easy way to control people, to get your way. And I don't want to spoil too much from the book, but that was very much the idea, is that like there's going to be this cult, and having a crazy fanatical cult that is doing horrible things is not in itself particularly, I mean, it's interesting, but it's not super helpful in a story in itself. But having that be connected to powerful people and how they leverage that is not only interesting but sadly realistic, and it's something that I hate in the real world. And I think in general, like if there's one thing that I really just despise more than anything, is extremism in general. Like
Mhm.
I feel like extremism is the root of so much of, like, whether in religion or otherwise, extremism is the root of so much of the bad things that happen in the world. And so adding in a fanatical cult that embodies extremism entirely was something that I was able to write about pretty easily and passionately. Yeah.
Mhm. And yeah, you can definitely tell. And they have the mutilation practices, which I'm not going to get too deep in, but again, very similar to other stories I've read where I was reading the words and being just cringing, just being
Yeah.
like, oh my god, I got to get past this. But
Yeah.
you know, how did you get that level of brutality across without making it, you know, hard to? I mean, it was hard to read,
Of course. Yeah.
but yeah, but not like a turn off or anything. Like it was one of those things again where it was similar to the acts that he was doing in book one, but different. There was some assaults and everything in book one, and this is just a different type of assault. But was that kind of just, this is how focused that this cult is, and why they're a threat to everybody?
Yeah. I think like making sure that, like, trying to make sure that it's not just gratuitous, it's not just for the sake of being shocking,
Mhm.
having it like be that by the end of the book, readers can all almost all collectively agree that when there was brutal things happening in the book, it did serve the story. It was actually necessary and it fit into how things unfolded. And then as for like conveying those things without, going too far, I think just like intuitively, something I generally believe about writing and writers is that being empathetic is kind of like a necessity to be a good writer. Like you were mentioning earlier, how most of the people you've had on the show have been down to earth, like whether it's Anthony Ryan or someone like me. And I'm not surprised by that. I think that the majority of good writers are going to be empathetic people who are generally kind and thoughtful, and that's what makes them good writers. And so I gotta want to, like, now it sounds like I'm, tooting my own horn, but I do
Two.
think I'm a very empathetic person. And so putting myself in the shoes of others and imagining, if I was a reader uh, and I was reading this, what would be palatable and what would go too far,
Mhm.
and what's necessary to, like, actually show, and what can you kind of like cut to black on. And so it was definitely, challenging. I had to revise things and be put more thought into that aspect of the book than most things, because I really didn't want to, like, I knew that, again, George R. R. Martin's my inspiration. Steven Erikson and their series have wildly brutal stuff. And with Born in Fury, I did feel like it was a little soft for my liking. Like I didn't go in that direction as much because I was just trying to be more reserved. And I knew with Winds I wanted to go in on that and not hold back, but also not uh you know like hurt readers or upset them in a way that isn't helpful. So
Mhm.
I think just having that empathy, caring enough to like try to handle that with tact. I couldn't tell you exactly how I managed it, but I am glad that generally, like, from all the feedback I've heard from the reception, I don't think I've had a single person say that like this felt like gratuitously like, just for the sake of shock value, being brutal. Like the author is just reveling in it. Uh and that's despite the fact that insanely brutal stuff happens in this book. So yeah.
Yeah, which again, it didn't come up as gratuitous at all. It just made the point that much harder, that how much evil there is in this world that they have to go through, like are facing.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that kind of ties into what I took away from the book as a whole, which I guess was the theme, the underlying theme that I saw in it was the will to survive. Especially once they got captured and Rizu went to, try and it's not even a spoiler. Try and go take out the empress.
Yeah. It's like an
Um,
inciting incident pretty much. So
yes, yeah. So it's hard to talk about anything without just that.
exactly. Yeah. It
But
happens like very early in the book. So it's fine.
very early. But after that, they're in the capital and in the middle of an empire that they have been trying to stay far away from.
Yeah.
And they have his kids, everything else going on. I feel like like I said, the underlying theme, which I'm not sure if you agree with, is doing what you have to do to survive, and kind of facing things that come your way, and when the odds seem insurmountable, doing what you have to do to make it through and also take care of the ones you love.
Yeah.
Um, so is that was what you were going for with it, because that was
That was
handled
one of the themes for
real
sure.
well.
Yeah. And I would say particularly for Yue, who I'd say if there's one character who's like the most central character, it's him.
Mhm.
And his, catchphrase throughout the book is "We do what we must," which is exactly what you were saying. Like it's for him in particular, that theme holds true. But yeah, I mean, I suppose I think about it for almost every character that applies. And I think that theme is something that I don't know if like this is like wrong of me. I don't know like how writers are typically supposed to do it, but theme is something I don't think about too much ahead of time. It's something I just um like I'll have a sense of what sort, like for example, we talked about extremism and the fanaticism and that. I'll have a sense that I want to have broad things like that in the book, and then I'll start writing and it'll become refined into more specific themes throughout the process of writing the book. And then yeah, by the end of it you end up with some specific ones like the will to survive, doing what you have to do to survive. um how do you navigate a situation like the Ravi end up when they're taken to the heart of the empire that they hate and trying to destroy them? How are they going to get out of that situation? What kind of stuff, what kind of things are they going to have to do in order to get through that? Yeah.
And I feel like, I'm not sure if other people have mentioned it, but one of my favorite aspects that got added to this book was Hatsun's storyline. Um, it was very interesting because in book zero, I'm going to say book zero from
Right.
now
Yeah.
on. We had the Dragon Rider, we had the Assassin, and with the introduction of the Scholar storyline in book two, I feel like that was a fantastic addition because it was able to get those, not info dumps because it wasn't, but the way to learn about all the different cultures in kind of a scholastic setting. Um, and it didn't slow the pace down at all because he had his own trials and tribulations going on
Right.
while he was learning. But what made you want to add in that kind of plot line to the story?
Yeah, that's a really good question. um so one part of it is just because I have, an academic background myself. I studied philosophy in university and I really loved that setting. And so it was another thing that I figured I was going to do a good job at writing and I was going to enjoy writing. So that was part of it. And then another part of it is something you touched on, which is just using it as a vehicle to convey things about the world that it's like the other characters are so embroiled in the stuff happening in the empire, and or wherever they may be, the things they're going through are so drawing them into the present that there's not as much room to worry about things in the broader world. And so having a character who is in a different location altogether, who is, as you said, he has his own trials, he has his own drama, and that makes reading his chapters interesting in themselves. But what he's uncovering and what he's learning, it doesn't feel too far removed, or at least the hope was that it wouldn't feel too far removed from the rest of the story because the stuff that he's learning and uncovering involves those other characters, even if at the time he's not doesn't have a direct connection with them. Like very early on, I think it's like in Hatsun's second or third chapter, um, he is having a conversation with two of his fellow students on the way to the school, on their way to their boarding school, and they're talking about the Ravi just offhandedly, and the Ravi are the three central characters of the book. And so it's like right off the bat there's a bit of a connection there, so that readers, I the hope was that readers would be like, oh, okay, so like this isn't just some side story. Like there's that signpost even early on that
Mhm.
this is going to be related. And then obviously throughout the course of the book, for reasons that I don't want to reveal, that becomes more and more clear. So yeah, it was a combination of these factors of, I have a background in academia and I wanted to feature that. And I also wanted to use his story as a vehicle to unveil things about the world that would have been ham-fisted, or I don't know if that's the right word. Like they would have felt awkward and forced had I
Yeah.
been trying to weave them into the other characters' stories. And then also the part of the world that he's in, that's a country called Vesia, um, being able to show a nation kind of a bit more in depth as a counterpoint to the empire, which is where the majority of the book takes place. That was another thing I wanted to show the contrast, show how other parts of like that this world has varying rich cultures. Um, it's not a story just about this one empire.
Yeah, which is exactly what I said kind of at the beginning, where it felt much more fully fleshed out. You're traveling to different places. This is a perfect example of it because, like you said, the main story takes place in the Empire, but you
Right.
feel that you can you can close your eyes and kind of breathe in the sense that he's breathing and see the surroundings. And the way that it was described was very well done, and it
Thank
felt
you.
familiar by the end of it. It's interesting to go back and hear the trail of breadcrumbs that got left behind. Because, I don't know if it's just me, but a lot of the time when I'm reading, I can't see the forest through the trees, especially when I'm so engrossed in something. Like when
Hmm.
I'm reading this and when something happens towards the end where two of the storylines collide. Um, and, it's a very big reveal. I'm not saying anything, but when I go back and reread it, I'm sure, see a lot of different things where I'm like, okay, like now I'm kind of piecing this together. But when that reveal happened, I was like, holy shit! Like that
Yeah.
it was like such like a climax and accumulation of the multiple storylines that were weaved together really well. So kudos to that, because I don't know if it was just me, but I didn't see a couple of the things coming.
Thank
Um,
you. Yeah, and that
which
was actually by far the hardest thing to write in the whole
mm,
book. Actually, Hatsun's arc was the one that I had to rewrite the most in editing, and the initial version was way more boring, and the breadcrumbs weren't laid out nearly as neatly. And I I don't know if this is just for me or if this is with writers in general, but writing a mystery where you need to like have those breadcrumbs, and it's like what what's going on, all the details, but the reader obviously doesn't, and then you have to convey things to the reader slowly but surely without accidentally giving away too much or too little. That proved to be very challenging for me, and I'm guessing probably for most writers it'd be difficult, but yeah, that was tough, and I'm really glad to hear that it turned out well.
yeah,
And
it did,
you're
and
you're
it's
not the only one who said that. I've had a good few people be like, holy crap, like I'm really impressed with how you did this aspect of the story. So
mm. Yeah, so that's good to hear then. But yeah, because it like Alex is saying, it's very hard to balance because you were doing
right, yeah, exactly.
it was very well done though, where it was enough to keep you intrigued as you were reading, and I think it worked especially well because while you're discovering the mystery and putting the pieces together, the pace slowed down obviously because you're not dealing with assassins or anything
Yeah.
like that, but it wasn't. Every once in a while you read a book and you see the character's name pop up as the POV, and you're just like, shit. Like,
Yeah.
I gotta get through these like 5 pages and back to the good stuff. But this story, I love the scholar storyline, you know, for the most part. But this was very well done. So I definitely kudos to adding that in there, and especially like we said, uh, it was a very good way to enhance the world building and put us in a different perspective. Um,
Yeah, and
and sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. Yeah. I was just gonna say, definitely part of the idea with it also was to give, like, because the rest of the book is so intense and so fast moving, it was actually like the hope was to give a bit of a chance to take a breather for readers. And I definitely did like one of my biggest worries with the book in general and why I rewrote Hatsune stuff so much is specifically because I was scared he was going to be that character that
Mhm.
people were going to be like, "Oh, what's this? Like I don't want to read this. Like this is boring, this is slow. I want to go back to that." So it's definitely a relief that it seems like it didn't go that way. It seems like
No,
the intended effect of it being a bit of a breather while also being quite interesting and not being a slog, it worked out that way. It's a huge relief for me.
mhm. Yeah, which is needed, especially like when you start getting into the bigger page books and everything. It can't just be nonstop
Right.
action the whole time.
Yeah.
It kind of takes away from it after a while. So that was very smart. That's what I wanted to ask about it because that was very well done. And I feel like, and when I was looking at reviews and other stuff, people talking about it, I was like, "Where's my boy in there? How come no one's mentioning him?" So
Yeah.
I had to give him a little bit of credit for being well done.
Yeah.
Um, the other not advancement, sorry, addition to the book. We talked about it a little bit, but the way that the magic is done and the different creatures that come along with it, getting back into the action of things, we already were with Lakari for, Born in Fury and in this, and, I loved him. Obviously he's a dragon. It's hard not to love a dragon,
Yeah.
but very well done. But what made you want to? Again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are other varieties of dragon out there, I should say.
Hmm.
So, um, how did you pick those um, elements? I guess I could say for the other types of dragons and
Right.
creatures and like that.
Yeah, this is another one that's easy for me to answer because the answer to that one for sure is video games. Because, like, I'm not sure if you've heard of the series Monster Hunter. It's basically like it's a series where you hunt different types of dragons that are, all the different elements, and their designs are just fantastic. And I think video games in general, like the games I tend to like the most, role playing games where, and I guess this could also apply to like tabletop role playing games like D&D, but those games, the RPGs tend to have like all kinds of different creatures at like different power levels and different elements, and I've always just adored that. And so this was another thing that in Born in Fury, I was like, I'm gonna be reserved. I'm not gonna pursue this too much. But then when I was writing Winds, I was like, I know that I'm gonna, let myself indulge in this thing that I enjoy a lot.
Mhm.
And so there are and actually even Winds barely scratches the surface in this regard. I again didn't want to go overboard because I feel like Winds of War already has so much like world building in it in terms of like different creatures and different countries and stuff that I didn't want to go overboard, but I do fully intend on actually having more different types of dragons, like as in like species of dragons,
Mhm.
as well as all kinds of other animals. Like there's essentially dinosaurs in
Mhm.
this series, and I'm planning on having plenty more of those. And in particular, like one part of the empire we don't see at all, I don't think, in the Winds is the northern part of it. And I live in Canada, and I love snowy environments, and so I'm hoping for the next book to really delve into that and have a whole host of new creatures. Like this is like a small spoiler, small teaser, but I'm planning on having like bear riding
Wow.
warriors as part of it, just as a small example. Yeah.
How is again a little teaser? How's book two coming along?
So I basically it hasn't even started as of now, which I'm very sad to say. And the reason for that is because I did a terrible job of planning and scheduling the launch of this book. Just I guess because of inexperience. And actually I guess also because I do most of my stuff myself, including art, cover design, and I have like 10 illustrations in this book that I did myself because I really wanted to go above and beyond. As much as I could to make the product as robust as it could be. But 10 illustrations take a lot of time to make, and not to mention that the book itself is 200,000 words, and uh, I do the formatting myself, and so the amount of work I ended up having to do in the 2 or 3 months leading up to this book's launch, and even like in the months since it came out, it's still been crazy. Has been way too much, and I really should have like put off the release by like a solid 3 4 months to have it be that I could do that stuff without having to like kill myself with crunch the way I did. And then also to be able to start working on the next book in a more timely manner. Instead, what happened was I had to crunch like crazy, which resulted in some pretty severe burnout. And so right now I'm just kind of like in recovery, trying to like get my energy back and also catch up on life stuff that was neglected when I was crunching and focusing on the book, stuff around the house, just basic things like that.
Mhm.
Um, so that I can, hopefully in the coming weeks get to a point where I'm ready to actually in earnest start working on book two. And there's also a possibility, I'm not sure yet, but I might write a novella or something like that. I know that like that's the thing to do amongst indie authors, and I suppose there's a good reason why they all do that. So maybe I'll do that. I'm not entirely sure, but I do think that uh, once I start writing the second book or whatever I decide to do next, it's going to be much, much quicker than this one was because I have a much stronger grasp of my writing process now. And so even though it's getting delayed a bit and I haven't started on it just yet, I think it's going to be here. Uh, you know, I don't, I probably shouldn't like give an estimate, but definitely next year there's going to be a big new book.
Awesome. I'm very glad to hear that, you're kind of prioritizing yourself over the burnout and everything like that, because that can get very tedious and unfun real quick. So, as much as I'm sure everyone would be like, oh, I want to keep reading this and finding out what's happening, it's much more important in the long run for yourself, not
Yeah.
just the reader or anything like that, to take care of things on the home front and
Yeah.
recover, take a little breather, like do what you got to do. So, I commend you for that, because I feel like a lot of people end up running themselves into the ground and, end up hating what is supposed to be something that they love. So good job
Thank you.
recognizing that. And
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah, but the other thing I wanted to ask, I ask most people this because it just blows my mind, especially the way that you just described how crunch time went for you. That is about as DIY as a book could be. Um, you doing everything like that. But while I was reading, obviously on the Kindle, you highlight, you take quotes, like, there's very moving pieces that you've written. And I'm not going to list them off because I will butcher it. But when you're writing and come up with something and put it down, do you realize right away, I just nailed that line? Like, or this
Sometimes
sounds good, or does it have to be like a reader to catch up on it and be like, oh, this was awesome?
it's definitely both. Sometimes I don't even notice or don't even realize that I wrote peak, and then a reader will be like, "Holy crap, what a great line this is!" And I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? That actually is great." And
Mhm,
then other times I'll write it and I'll be like, "Damn, that's good." And
mhm,
then sometimes it'll be that like I have an idea for a line, like way before, and I'm like, "Okay, I have to use this at some point, like a concept or a line or something like that." And then I'll finally reach a point where I'm writing the book where I'm like, "This is where this will fit." And then I add it in. So it's like I've known for a while that this is going to be fire. I just didn't know when I was going to be able to put it in.
mhm.
So yeah,
Which works out well because you don't want to just shoehorn in something awesome.
exactly.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
nothing worse than that, where it's like, oh, this was so close to being awesome, but
yeah,
it hit
yeah,
the bump
exactly.
just a little bit.
Yeah, I try
um,
really hard to avoid like just to maintain a more natural flow as much as I can. Obviously, that's a really difficult thing to do well, but as much as I can help it, forcing things in just because I would like to have them in. Again, like that's why I added Hatsun's whole character is to avoid that with the other characters,
mhm,
forcing in, world building, lore, things like that that didn't fit.
mhm. And again, great decision with that. And
Yeah.
we're getting something from the chat. Speaking of writing peak, you should share that story.
Speaking of writing peak, you should share that story. Which story, Mandy? I'm actually not sure which story Mandy's referring to. Mandy's my wife, by the way.
Yes, that I
Yeah,
did know.
yeah. Mandy, which story?
Either yell really loud or type quick.
Well, we can just continue chatting while she
It involves a locked door.
and oh no, oh my god. I okay, I know exactly what she's talking about now. So While I was writing The Winds of War, I get very focused when I'm writing, and I have noise canceling headphones. And I can't remember exactly how this unfolded, but there was one time where Mandy, my wife, needed something, and my room is upstairs, so I went downstairs to help her. Something outside, and I help her. I go in, and then without realizing, just kind of unconsciously, like I have ADHD, so I suppose these things happen more to me than other people. I locked the door after I came in, even though she's still out there. And then I went upstairs and I was writing, a really, really good part of The Winds of War. It was a very intense part. It's like the biggest battle that happens in the book. So I go back up to my office. I put on my headphones, noise canceling headphones, and I get back to work. And then I lock in for like a really good 2 hours of writing. And all the while, Mandy's outside. And on top of that, she doesn't have her phone with her or anything. So she's out there. She starts ringing the doorbell, and I don't hear a thing. She's, thinking, what should I do? Eventually, she builds up the courage to ask a passerby, hey, this is so embarrassing, but can I borrow your phone? My husband locked me out by accident. And she's like worried that like, does she look like a domestic violence victim or something like that, that she got locked out? And so she texts me on the phone. But the thing is, again, my noise canceling headphones, I didn't see the text. She calls me. I don't hear the call. And again, I'm still locked in. I'm still writing one of the best parts of the book, feeling great about it. And anyway, at some point, I guess just because I decided I'm like, now's a good time to take a break. I take my headphones off, check my phone, and then my stomach just sinks. I'm like, oh my God, these are like texts from like an hour ago saying like, Momo, I'm locked outside. Momo, please come open the door. And these are texts from numbers I don't recognize. So it just hit me what I'd done. And so that's like probably the number one story in my life that I will never live down. Um, Mandy and like our I don't know if you know, but Mandy's a Twitch streamer. So we have a community over on Twitch, and they will never let me live that one down. That's
Yeah,
gonna be
that's
hanging over my head
really
forever.
rough.
And honestly, I deserve it. I can't even be mad about it because I
No,
locked my wife out for like 3 hours.
sometimes
And
you just gotta take the L. Mandy, if it makes you
exactly.
feel any better, the book was really good.
Yeah. And that part turned out really well. It was a very good writing session, one of the best. It's just a shame that Mandy had to suffer so so badly for it.
Well, yeah, now you're gonna. I hope this isn't kind of like a new trend that's gonna come where the biggest battle scene is just gonna be like you kind of got to sit outside for a couple hours. And if anything, you
Well,
got to start writing it in the summer.
one scary thing is that there's been like once or twice since where again just unconsciously I accidentally locked the door when she's still out there. Those times she had her phone with her, and I've since left my phone nice and loud and left it on vibrate so that such things can be avoided. But I have got to break this habit of locking the door unconsciously without actually considering whether it should be locked, because there might be a loved one locked outside.
Wow, that is a really good story. And yes, as Alex said, that is writer problems for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, uh, before signing off here, I wanted to ask because I've seen you and Mandy recently posting about, oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. New video game just dropped, Hollow Knight.
Silk Song. Yeah.
Yes. How has that gone so far? I installed it the other night, but haven't gotten to play it yet.
So it's interesting. Like I'm not super far into it because I've been quite busy, but what I've played so far is amazing. It's lived up to everything I hoped it would be. I loved the first game so much. It's one of my favorite games ever, and this one for me so far has just delivered, and it's been worth the insane wait. But on Mandy's stream, there's been a whole bunch of discussion about like a lot of people have been getting frustrated and actually upset that the game is just too hard. There's been a whole bunch of discourse around that, and I haven't gotten far enough to like experience that for myself, but I'm curious to see whether I end up feeling that way, because yeah, there's been some people who really looked forward to the game and then essentially rage quit because they're just like, this is too frustrating, this is too hard. And I think the developers even like released a patch to like tone it down.
Mm.
So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Hopefully, it's installed when I play because I rage quit. Like I remember
Yeah.
when Elden Ring dropped and everyone was like, "No, this is like the accessible Dark Souls," and I was like, "Oh, awesome!" Like George R. R. Martin wrote the story, like it's accessible. I'm gonna love this. And I think I downloaded it maybe 5 times, and each time I get like 3.5 hours in, and I end up it's over. I can't do it. It is the rage quit game for me.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so yeah,
The people who like will act like Elden Ring is easy are just the people who are very comfortable with those kind of games and they've played the harder ones and really enjoy them. And then
mhm.
from that point of view, sure, Elden Ring's super accessible, but from the point of view of people who don't play games to get spanked essentially, they don't want to get like steamrolled by the game they're playing, that's not fun to them. Elden
Mhm.
Ring is not going to be, it's not going to feel accessible at all compared to like playing Mario or something actually.
Anything, Skyrim,
Exactly. Yeah,
type of thing.
exactly. Like any pretty much normal games. Like those
Yeah,
kind of games are for a certain type of person. And as somebody myself who like I love those kind of games and I'm pretty good at them, I absolutely do not advocate for everyone to play them and to, I don't think people should play Elden Ring and feel like it's easy at all.
that makes me feel better because I thought I sucked. I was talking with both my brothers, and they're like, "Oh, good, go right past the guy riding the horse at the beginning, and then focus on this." And I'm like, "He fucking sees me every time I
Yeah.
walk. Like, I can't do this." So that's a little bit reassuring, at least.
Yeah,
Um,
you're fine, don't worry.
oh, thank God. Besides video games, again, just to follow up, what other hobbies do you have?
All the usual ones. Mandy and I watch lots of movies and shows. We got a nice new TV recently, so it's been extra fun. The first time I've had a 4K TV, so it's been awesome. We just watched season 3 of Foundation, and I'm not sure if you know what that is. It's a sci-fi TV series based on Isaac Asimov's novels, and holy cow, it's fantastic. It's honestly one of the best shows I've seen, and in terms of sci-fi shows, I think it's the best one I've seen.
Wow.
So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I'm really looking forward to the fourth and I'm guessing final season. And yeah, obviously I love video games. I also am reading Dune for the first time, just the original Dune novel, and I'm constantly blown away by how amazing it is. And I really don't know how uh, Frank Herbert managed to write that book back when he did. It defies belief.
Yeah.
Um, and because I've been reading, and I'm also planning on starting the Sun Eater series that I've heard so many good things about. And I'm really like, I'm sure I'm going to love it. And the reason why I'm reading so much science fiction specifically is because when I'm writing my books, I notice that if I read something like science fiction, it makes my writing weird. Like I start to have sci-fi vibes in my fantasy book, and that's not good. So when I'm writing fantasy, I essentially need to read fantasy to keep the right vibes. And so now that I'm not writing, I'm like, finally, I can go and read these sci-fi books, watch these sci-fi shows. So that's why for me, it's been all sci-fi recently. Yeah.
Nice.
How
Yeah,
about
I'm
you?
gonna have to check out Foundation then because that sounds awesome.
Foundation is phenomenal. I highly recommend it.
I'm gonna check it out, man.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, but I just wanted to say thank you again for wanting to hop on. We went long, which is nice. It was very easy to talk. So
Yeah, it
whenever
flew
you
by.
want
I
to come
didn't even
back on,
notice.
yeah, whenever you want to come back on, you consider this your open invite for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very
Yeah, I
much
will
looking
for
forward
sure.
to it.
Yeah,
And
thank you so much for having me. Again, great job with, what you're doing with this show. I will definitely be on again at some point. And yeah, thank you so much. It was
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man, and keep crushing it. I'm very much looking forward to reading what comes next and giving it another 5 star. You can go 3 for
Thank
3.
you.
And everyone in the chat, thank you for joining. Be sure to
Thanks,
go
everyone.
check out the Winds of War, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.